So, one of the big mistakes people make when organizing is not understanding what's in something called their circle of influence. So, imagine three concentric circles. The middle or the innermost circle is your circle of control. It consists of all the things you directly control. In other words, the things you can do for yourself. So, this might include choosing what route you walk home from school, whether you study for a test, things like that. The middle circle is your circle of influence. It consists of the things you have some influence over, but don't directly control. So basically, the things you can ask other people to do, and they'll most likely say yes. So if you're pretty sure you can ask a friend to walk with you between classes and they'd say yes, that is in your circle of influence. The outer circle there is what's called your circle of concern. These are the things that affect you, but which you really can't do much about. So, for example, the number of hours you are required by law to spend in school affects you a great deal, but you don't have much ability to change it. Now, when you start out organizing, what a bully thinks and says is probably outside of your circle of influence. If you ask them to change, they're unlikely to say yes. And this is very important to realize because when you spend all of your time focused on things that are outside of your circle of influence, you become frustrated and discouraged, and your ability to make change shrinks. Instead, you want to start inside your circle of influence by asking people to do things that you can get them to say yes to. When you do that, you build relationships and you build skills such that your circle of influence gets bigger. You know more people, there are more yeses you can get, and you can make more change. So when you're picking what action to do, it's very important to focus on the things you actually have the power to make happen, and then strategically build up to bigger things. So with that in mind, let's look at the cushion, interrupt, persuade framework. When someone is bullying you, there are three components of the problem. The first is that someone wants to do something hurtful. The second is that they take a hurtful action. And the third is that that hurtful action impacts you. All three of these are potential avenues for change. The most satisfying is the last of these, to persuade the person to stop wanting to hurt you. This fixes the root of the problem, since, as we have all experienced, someone who really wants to get to you can often find a way to get to you, even if they're threatened with punishment or an authority figure tries to stop them. However, persuading the person is also the avenue you have the least influence over. There are techniques, which we'll talk about in the next video, for persuasion, but at the end of the day, you cannot control what is in someone else's head. You can only invite them to change and hope they take you up on it. What you can do more easily is have someone else interrupt the behavior. If a bully is busy doing or paying attention to something else, that means they're not hassling you. This can include having an accomplice create a distraction or engage the bully in conversation about another topic. It can include recruiting a group with greater social status, for example, to stand in the bully's spot in the hallway and displace them. It can be putting up a fake bathroom closed sign so they don't come in. It can be someone telling them directly to stop what they're doing, but it doesn't have to be. Anything that interrupts or distracts them in their attempt to do harm will work, even if they never realized there was an intervention. However, these sorts of interruptions often require someone who has at least some social pull with the bully. And if you don't have that, the last option, cushion the impact, just requires a few of your friends. It's definitely the easiest to do. And for this technique, the bully is doing their thing. They might be saying whatever or doing whatever, but there's some sort of social cushion that stops it from having as much of an impact on you. This can include anything that creates physical distance, so it's harder for you to hear their taunts, whether it's asking a teacher to put you in different groups for class assignments, your friends sitting behind you in class so the bully can't get to you, etc. It can also include your friends having a conversation with you in the hall so that you are distracted by that rather than listening to what the bully is saying. Or you could be cushioned by emotional support, talking with someone sympathetic afterward. You could count up the spaces where you're not being bullied, like we did earlier, to make the problem feel smaller. You can also put your experience in a context that gives us more meaning. And this is kind of subtle, so as mentioned it a little more, because the weird thing about being human is that taking hits to save someone else is actually a very different experience than taking hits because you're a helpless victim who has no choice. And so one of the things you might want to play around with is simply how do you understand your story of yourself? If you are an organizer who's working on fixing your school's culture before your little siblings get there, that can make the same harms land very differently if this is a temporary problem that I have not yet fixed versus if it's a permanent thing that is just going on because I'm helpless. That doesn't always work, but I'll toss it out there. So depending on your situation, cushion, interrupt, or persuade, any of these might be the most promising avenue to pursue. Or you can try multiple routes at once. Whatever works is great. Just remember to use your connections with allies, be creative, and keep your eyes on the prize. The goal isn't to crush the bully. Trying to do that just means they take up even more space in your head, and it oftentimes activates their allies against you. Your goal is to not get hurt by the behavior as quickly and efficiently as possible. Now, like I said, cushioning the impact and interrupting the behavior are often the easiest and fastest routes to address this. But at the end of the day, persuading the person is often the most satisfying. So check out the next video on power mapping to learn a little bit more about ways to do this.